If they're the same time, there's not causality.
So animals with no labeling, would
Sure.
they...
Well, they do labeling. Because, I mean, like a dog, I mean, very basic, but the dog would label food, danger, enemy in a very primitive way so that they can also function. Because if they don't have meaning, then a dog couldn't survive.
Okay, so let's say a baby.
A baby also...
Which cannot survive on its own side because it has no ability to react to any labeling that may or may not.
Well, I think even if you put something warm next to a baby, the baby will pull away from it.
Is that already labeling? So it's not dependent on language?
Sorry?
I'm saying the fact that a baby pulls away from fire because it burns,
Right.
is that already labeling? Or is it just...
So remember, labeling doesn't mean we have to have language. Labeling just means we need to have some cognitive ability, some
separation in our mind between...
well, some understanding, yeah.
But does a baby need to have what I learned is that there is a very primitive brain that
Sure.
reacts without not labeling and even not any conceptualization or even, you just, something hurts, you pull away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think also the baby has some primitive level of, or basic level of cognitive ability. I mean, they have to develop that, of course, and I think studies show that the baby's ability to do this line drawing is very basic, and really they only start to learn that.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is if we were to go back into that state of mind, would we realize emptiness?
Yeah, so some traditions actually say this, that we need to go back to the childlike mind, or the baby's mind. But this is what's called the pre-trans fallacy.
Okay. What does that mean?
Pre-trans fallacy means that a baby, like you said, is not caught up in this false grasping, but not because it realizes anything, but it doesn't have the ability to even draw lines. Whereas we don't want to go back to that. We want to move forward and realize this is the case. That's where we're moving forward. Going back to that is this pre means the fallacy that that's the solution. Go back to a state where we can't even begin to draw lines. But the actual answer, the trans, we need to not go pre-grasping, we need to go trans, we need to go beyond grasping by understanding that grasping is ignorance, by vipassana. So we need to move forward instead of back.
I'm in complete agreement with all you said since you started reading from Mr. Val's book, until the point that you draw the line. And I want to ask, because from my understanding there is no such thing as continuous change, not in quantum mechanics and not according to what you described here. So I'm just trying to see if I'm missing something about this line. Can you please...
So what's quantum mechanics assertion?
There is no continuous... time is a concept like you...
Of course.
So there is no way, there's no continuous change, nothing like this in quantum physics. I'm not talking about Buddhism.
I don't understand what you mean by there's no continuous change.
There is no continuous, you can either... Let's not get into it. I'm just asking...
But here we're talking about within the framework of time. If we go beyond that, of course, Buddhism would also agree. If we go beyond time, of course there's no continuous change. Of course.
I think that emptiness starts between the squares to the line. Emptiness line there. We cannot do the understanding. Our perception of emptiness starts there because there is no way to transfer from the square to the line.
But is your question that this is not correct because we're making it into a thing?
Yes.
Of course it's not a thing. It's merely labelled.
Okay.
It's not real in that sense. It doesn't exist from its own side. Continuous change does not exist from its own side. Yeah? Again, when we say this, it's just merely labelled. Continuous change only exists within our conceptual framework. And if we go beyond that, or beyond time, of course, not existing. Because in emptiness, there is no time. Time is also something that is created. Yeah?
So the same concept can affect the self. Is it the same idea of that the self is not independently existent, it's a flow?
We're coming, I'm starting with the work, physical world, because it's easier, and then in the next session we're going to move to start looking at the person.
I want to talk about yesterday's practice, about the Vipassana practice. So when you ask to look for the self who's trying to stabilize the group, I couldn't find it.
Sure.
And it was very moving, and I couldn't really fall asleep at night. I felt like there's like all and everything's collapsing, and it's like really terrifying experience.
And we're going to
feel like now.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about this in the next session and this afternoon, and this is a very important point. And so you'll get some answers.
I'm not going crazy.
No. No, absolutely not. In fact, it sounds like you had a very strong, valid experience. What's probably happened is you misinterpreted that experience. That's why all this agitation. So we're going to look at that. And that's very common, in fact, very common. But we're building up to this. In the next session and this afternoon, we're going to talk a lot about this.
I can safely do the following practices.
Sure, no problems, no problems.
My question is similar. Is there a difference between Mahayana and Theravada? Is that in Theravada, this theory is about the old world, and in Theravada, only for the self?
Yeah. So again, we have to distinguish between a certain philosophical system's understanding versus a person who's practicing within a tradition. So the Theravada Buddhist traditions are based on this philosophical understanding that there is an objective world and the only problem with the person. And the Mahayana tradition is based on the fact that there's nothing exists independently. But then when it comes to an individual who's practicing either emptiness or no self, what they come to realize, of course, could be very different than what their philosophical system is they're using as a basis. So, and in fact, some of the Indian masters from the Mahayana would even quote some Pali texts to say, well, look, there's some teaching on emptiness there in the Pali tradition. So, therefore, even if we are within a Theravada tradition which says there is an objective world and you only realise no self, if we are applying this investigation very well and going deeper and deeper, the assertion is we'll come to realise actually the world is not existing as it appears. They'll come to realise emptiness, even though they're not explicitly taught that in the philosophical system, that they can go beyond that. So therefore, we need to understand that. Otherwise we have some misconceptions about the different traditions.
I want to remind you that you started with making fun of the senses.
No, I didn't make fun of the senses.
No, Wallace explained to us.
Yeah.
Senses said that you cannot rely. That's his assertion, no?
No. He said that science said you can't rely on the senses.
Okay. But he's happily adopting it.
No, he wasn't adopting it. He was saying that according to science, the senses are not reliable, so let's get rid of them.
Okay, not reliable. And I want to remind you that everything you are teaching now is based on the senses.
No, it's based on the mind, the mental. That's not senses.
The explanation about seed and plant. When is it stopped to be this, to be that, is not senses?
No,
Let's
it's-
take it out and look at it. Is it seed? No, it's not seed. It's already
It's our
plant.
conceptual framework.
Based on our senses, no?
Of course, based on the senses, but it's the idea is not in the senses, it's in our conceptual mind.
No question.
Sure.
No question. about
Sure.
that. I'm saying you cannot get rid of the senses.
Correct. Absolutely.
And our judgment is based on them, and on one more element which was not raised here, maybe it's not part of Buddhism. I think the whole big part of our conversation is about language. In reality, there is no mountain and no valley. This is language
Correct.
labeling it. There is no mountain.
Very good. The problem is, even though intellectually you might understand that, experientially that's not how we see things. Is it?
So what?
So what? That's going to be the next session. The so what is that causes attachment to pleasurable things, aversion to unpleasant things, and all of our suffering. That's the so what. It really does. You exactly hit the nail on the head. It's all language, it's all perspective, and if we understand that experientially, the Buddhist assertion is we'd be free of all mental afflictions and suffering.
You don't need to go so far. I think if you understand.
Buddhism does.
No, I think if you look at language
Right.
and you really understand that language is not as transparent as we think, that it has its own agenda and it cuts reality according to the language. It cuts reality. Language has decided that this is a mountain. There is no more mountain.
Correct. Correct.
Language has called it, and for example, a tree, and what we call a tree, and a bird. Language has decided that these are two separate nouns. It could say that it is one noun, and from time to time, part of this noun flies and come back or not come back.
This is exactly emptiness, is that exactly language has defined that, and that's correct. That's what we mean by the third point. Exactly this. The problem is we don't instinctively see that way. Intellectually, we can maybe appreciate it, but instinctively, when we look, it seems really like there's a mountain there. If we think about it, we say, oh, but I'm doing that. But instinctively, that's not how we see things. This is the problem. We are fusing, this is another example of cognitive fusion. We are fusing language onto the basis. We're saying exactly your point, is that experientially, instinctively we go flower, laptop, cup.
Yeah, we don't have any other solution.
We have a solution.
Okay.
The solution is experientially to know that we're doing this.
Only to know. We cannot avoid going on doing it.
Yes, we can, because it's like being lucid in a dream. Now, if you're in a dream, and this is the example they often use, if you're in a dream and you're not lucid, you think things are real, no?
Yes.
But if you become lucid, they'll still appear real, won't they?
Yes.
They do.
Yes.
But you know
I know.
it's not real. You know this is just a creation of your mind.
Yes.
Buddhism says if you realize emptiness, your waking world will be like that. You will see directly, it will appear real, but you will know, because you're lucid through emptiness, that it's a product of the mind. Which means you would not have attachment to pleasant things, aversion to unpleasant things, you would enjoy your life a hell of a lot more. So it's exactly like this. So I think you're really getting there very well. Good. So let's take a morning tea break and come back and have a look at this idea, why is it a problem to see the world as being separate from us, independent of us? We'll have a look at that. But let's